Hey everybody, this is Miss NC Bound back with another video. So you all see this little girl up on the screen. Her name is Asha Degree. Asha was a 9-year-old little girl who disappeared in the middle of the night on a stormy night back in February, actually Valentine's Day, 25 years ago. And to this day has never been found, although there have been recent updates as recent as the beginning of this month. So let me give you a little background story on her. Uh, Asha Degree, she went missing at the age of 9 years old from a small town in North Carolina, Shelby, North Carolina. In the early morning hours of Valentine's Day 2000, for reasons unknown, she packed her book bag, left the family home north of the city, and began walking along nearby North Carolina Highway 18, despite heavy rain and wind. Several passing motorists saw her when one turned around at 1.3 miles from her home and began to approach her. She left the roadside and ran into a wooded area. In the morning, her parents discovered her missing from her bedroom. She has not been seen since. And from, researching this story, she shared a room with her little brother, and they were, or actually it's her big brother, but I think at that time he might have been 10 or 11 years old. So they shared a bedroom. One of the parents, I'm not sure if it was the mother or the father, went into the bedroom to wake them up for school. And that's when they discover Asha was no longer in her bed. They searched the house, they searched the neighborhood, and they had family members that live close by to where she lived at. So they checked, relatives, houses, properties. Asha just vanished, not to be seen from again. So a search began that day, led to the location of some of her personal effects near where she was last seen. A year and a half later, her book bag, still packed with unearthed from a construction site along Highway 18, north of Shelby, in a town called Morganton, North Carolina. At that point where she ran in the woods, a billboard now stands appealing for help finding her. Her family hosts an annual walk from their home to the billboard to draw attention to the case. And this walk happens every year on Valentine's Day. Again, the walk starts at the house where Asha was last seen to a billboard that stands probably between a mile and a mile and a half from the last place Asha was last seen. While the circumstances of Asha's disappearance at first seemed to suggest she was running away from home, investigators could not find a clear reason as to why she may have done so. She was also younger than most children who choose to do this. Years after her disappearance, it was concluded by authorities that Degree had been abducted. After she left the home, the case has drawn national media attention. In 2015, the FBI joined state and county authorities in a reopened investigation, offering a reward for information that could help solve the case. 10 years later, the case has been declared a homicide investigation, and suspects have been named after several searches. So just imagine your kid gets up in the middle of the night, packs a little book bag, and proceeded to leave the house. And it was a rainy and stormy night. And she's just walking along the highway with several people stopping to um, you know, look at her without, calling 911. But they tried to approach her, and I guess that scared the little girl away, and she took off in the woods. And then a year or so later, again, her book bag was located. But the main question is, where's Asha? So Asha's parents, Harold and Asha Degree, they married on Valentine's Day in 1988. Their son O'Brien was born a year later. Asha was born in 1990. The Degrees raised both of their children in their house on Oakcrest Drive in a residential subdivision amidst a generally rural area north of Shelby, North Carolina, on the western edge of the Charlotte metropolitan area. Both of her parents, they, both worked. She came from a middle class, all American family. Both of her children played sports in school. Asha was actually on her elementary team's basketball team, or elementary school basketball team. So this was a normal, family, nothing out the ordinary. Asha was in the fourth grade when she disappeared, going into a 3-day weekend on the second week of February. The schools were closed that Friday, February 11th, while the Degrees still had to work. The children spent the day at their auntie's house, which she lived in the same neighborhood, from which they went to their youth basketball practices after school. The following day, Asha's basketball team, on which she was a star point guard, lost its first game of the season. Asha had fouled out. Her parents recalled that she was somewhat upset about this, crying along with her teammates afterwards, but seemed to have gotten over it and watched her brother's game later that day. And I know there was a lot of talk early on in the investigation about how Asha, left because her parents were upset that she fouled out, or that she made the team lose the basketball game that day. But there was nowhere in the investigations to prove that that was a true statement. So, no, she did not leave the house because they lost the game, or nothing to that effect played a role in her leaving. So on February 13th, the day before Valentine's Day, which was a Sunday, the children went to church from a relative's house and then returned home around 8 p.m. that night. Both of the children went to bed in the room they shared. Almost an hour later, the power went out in the neighborhood after a nearby car accident. The power came back on at 12:30 a.m., at which time Harold is the father, checked on his children and saw both Asha and O'Brien asleep in their beds. He checked again shortly before he went to bed at 2:30 a.m. on February 14th, and again saw both of them still there. But shortly afterwards, O'Brien, who was age 10 at the time, recalls hearing his sister's bed squeak. He did not further rouse himself, as he assumed she was merely changing positions in her sleep. Apparently around this time, Asha got out of the bed, taking a book bag she had previously packed with several sets of clothing and personal items, and left the house. Between 3:45 and 4:15 a.m., a truck driver and a motorist saw her walking south along Highway 18, wearing a long-sleeved white t-shirt and white pants, just north of its junction with Highway 180. They reported this to a police officer after seeing a TV report about her disappearance. The motorist said he turned his car around because he thought it was strange such a small child will be out by herself at that hour. He circled 3 times and saw Degree run into the woods by the roadside and simply disappear. It was a rainy night, and the witness said there was a storm raging when he saw her. County Sheriff Dan Crawford said, "We're pretty sure it was her because the description they gave are consistent with what we know she was wearing." He added that they also saw her at the same place heading in the same direction. Aquila, who is the mother, awoke at 5:45 a.m. to get the children ready for school that morning. This involved drawing a bath for them because they had not been able to take one the night before due to the power outage. When she opened the children's room to wake them before their 6:30 alarm and call them to their bath, O'Brien was in his bed. Asha was not, and Aquila was unable to find her in the house or in the family's cars. She told Harold she could not find their daughter. He suggested Asha may have gone over to his mother's house across the street. When Aquila called there, her sister-in-law said Asha was not there. That's when I went into panic mode. I heard a car next door. I put on my shoes, ran outside. Aquila called her mother, who told her to call the police. So the search began by 6:40 a.m. The first police officers arrived on the scene. Police dogs called to the scene could not pick up Asha's scent. Aquila went through the neighborhood calling Asha's name, and she had awakened everyone by 7 a.m. Friends, families, and neighbors canceled their plans for the day to assist police in searching the vicinity, where the pastor of their church, along with other clergymen, came to the Degrees' home to support them. By day's end, all that had been found was a mitten, which Aquila Degree said did not belong to her daughter. Noting that no winter clothes had been taken from the house, local news coverage prompted the two drivers who had seen Asha walking along the road early that morning, including the one who attempted to approach her, apparently prompted Asha to flee into the woods to report the sightings to police. On February 15th, candy wrappers were found in a shed at a nearby business along the highway near where Asha had been seen running into the woods. Along with them were a pencil, a green marker, and a yellow hair bow that were identified by her parents as belonging to Asha. Also found was a photograph of a black girl around Asha's age who has yet to be identified. It was the only trace of her during the initial search. On February 16th, Aquila realized that Asha's bedroom was missing her favorite clothing, including a pair of blue jeans with a red stripe. A week later, the search was called off. After 9,000 man-hours had been invested in a search of the 2 to 3 mile radius of where she had been seen, flyers had been posted all over the area, and 300 leads had been submitted that ranged from possible sightings to tips about abandoned houses and wells where Asha may have ended up. We have never really had the first good substantial lead, said County Sheriff Dan Crawford at a news conference. He urged the media to keep the story alive. Okay, it's just strange that the two people who actually saw the little girl, I wish that they would have, called the police instead of, trying to get her because of, I can understand why they tried to get her. I mean, it was pouring down raining. It was a blackout. And, here this little 9-year-old girl probably terrified seeing a stranger trying to approach her, and she just took off. So I understand that, but I just wish they would have also called the law, at that time. So at a news conference on February 22nd of 2000, Crawford said he was going long range with this search for Asha. Both the FBI and the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigations got involved and put her on their prospective databases for missing children. While the agencies were done searching the area of her home and route, we're following everything, Crawford insisted. From Aquila's account, again, Aquila is her mother, Asha had taken with her, investigators believe she had planned and prepared for this departure over several days preceding her disappearance. She's not your typical runaway. Another expert, Ben Imeni of the National Centers for Children, Missing and Exploited Children, noted that most children who run away are at least 12. An FBI agent who pointed to the lack of this issue said she might have been running away from such a dysfunctional family or poor academic performance. Still, investigators believe that was the most likely explanation for her departure, but that for some reason she either got off track or was abducted. And I do remember back in the like Phil Donahue, Montel Williams, all of the talk shows, daytime talk shows, who had shows on air back, in the early 2000s. I do remember the parents being all over them. I mean, it was the talk of the town back then, where, you couldn't turn, they were on Oprah. You couldn't turn on Oprah or, again, Phil Donahue, Sally Jesse Raphael, and did not hear about this story back then. So again, it was a real large billboard that is erected up at the place where Asha was last seen at. So in May of 2021, stock car racing driver Travis Kittleson featured an image of Degree on the hood of his car for an event in Concord, North Carolina, which was broadcast live on TNN. In August of 2001, Asha's book bag and other items were discovered during a construction project of Highway 18 in Burke County, which is near Morganton, which is about 26 miles north of the town of Shelby, North Carolina, where Asha disappeared at. It was wrapped in 2 black trash bags. The workers who found it said the book bag contained Asha's name and phone number. The FBI took it to their laboratory in Quantico, Virginia, for further forensic analysis. Results from that testing have not been shared publicly. To date, it is the last evidence found in the case. On the 20th anniversary of Asha's disappearance, the FBI confirmed that the book bag contained a copy of Dr. Seuss's McElliott Pool and a T-shirt depicting the band New Kids on the Block. Neither appeared to have been her property before they were found in her bag. The book was from the library at her elementary school. For many years afterwards, leads turned out to be dead ends. In 2004, acting on a tip reportedly received from an inmate at the county jail, the sheriff's office began digging into at an intersection in the town of Lawndale, North Carolina. The bones that were found turned out to be from an animal and not human. So currently, I know there's been a lot of updates as to this case. So I know currently, and it's been all over the news, so in September of 2024, a search warrant was executed by the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office and the FBI in relation to the case. A news release from the Sheriff's Office said the warrant was issued based on physical evidence. No human remains were recovered, but multiple items of interest, including a green 1964 AMC Rambler were taken from the site. And a 1964 Rambler is an old, vehicle. The search warrants indicate that authorities believe Degree was a homicide victim and that her body has been concealed. On February 13th, 2025, which is 25 years almost to the day Asha disappeared, the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office executed 3 search warrants, seizing cell phones from a local man and 2 of his children. 5 days later, the warrants were made public and included text messages exchanges between the suspects and were obtained from a search warrant the previous October. On April the 4th of this year, a property, quote, once owned by a prominent figure in the investigation, end quote, was searched by investigators. And I know some of the latest incidents, or not incidents, I'm sorry, some of the latest developments that I've seen on the news have been that apparently one of the daughters and a friend were at this party, and one of the daughters, admitted to unaliving this young girl, and then made some sort of a statement about if they find that shirt, they're going to blame it on my dad, so it sounds like there's a lot of cover-up going on. And the main person who was the focus of this investigation had passed away a few years ago. So by all accounts, from what I read in news reports, that this family owned like a home health care facility, and they allowed their 2 teenage daughters, and they were early teenagers, drive to transport a patient back to this home care facility that their family owned. And again, this patient had since passed away, but apparently the girls had hit Asha and called their parents, and their parents came and helped cover up and conceal this death almost 25 years ago, or actually it is 25 years ago. So right now, I think the investigation is still being processed. There's still search warrants being served. And I just hope that the family, Asha Degree's family, get the closure that they desperately need. I mean, I just can't imagine going 25 years and not knowing what happened to your loved ones. And this wasn't just a loved one. I mean, this is their child, their 9-year-old child that they last seen in the bed sleeping on a stormy night, and then had a power failure on top of that. So, just prayers going up for the Degree family. I really hope that they get the closure that they desperately need, and I'll keep you posted on any updates on this story. That's it for this video, and leave your comments below in the comment section. Like, comment, and subscribe to Can We Talk and Can We Talk Too. We appreciate the support, and I'll see you next time. I'm out of here. Peace.
Details have emerged regarding the disappearance of 9-year-old Asha Degree, who vanished during a thunderstorm from her home in Shelby, North Carolina in the early hours of February 14th, 2000. Last week, a search warrant was granted for multiple properties across the state where a car resembling the one Asha was last seen getting into was towed. The warrants were granted after DNA samples from Asha's recovered backpack and its contents linked her to a woman named Annalie Deadman Ramirez, who was 13 at the time, and a man named Russell Underhill, who was also linked to the Deadman family. Two suspects have been formally named as Roy and Connie Deadman, Annalie's parents, who, according to court documentation, may have assisted their daughter to conceal Asha's death. They deny any involvement. Police believe that Asha was killed and her body was hidden. A number of items have been seized from the properties, but no human remains have been uncovered as of yet. The investigation into Asha Degree's disappearance continues. Some significant details have emerged
God for the 9 years that we did get to have her. And I do miss all the years, and it makes me sad for what I have missed. And I we look at O'Brien, and we can cut up with him, and she's always there. She's the first thing I think of when I get up in the morning, and the last thing I think of when I go to bed. So it's people think because they see us laughing, going to work, we never forget. I will never forget as long as I draw breath.